So, hello. Can you please sit down because it's time to start again? Thank you. I'm very pleased to pronounce the next presenter because it's Tamar Sadeh, right? And everyone who has been to Elag a couple of times knows that Tamar is a well-known figure to the community of Elag. You have been here a lot of times, haven't you? And done quite a few presentations as well. Tamar, you're the Director of Discovery and Delivery Strategy at Libris Group. And I think that today you're going to talk about known item searches and how to support them in the best way in the discovery tools or search tools, whatever. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here again after a few years of missing Elags. My first Elag was in 2001, and I think the first 10 years I didn't miss even once. So it's very exciting to come back. I'm going to cover in my presentation 4 topics. First is what are users searching, library users are searching, and I'm talking about a discovery system. But I can tell you from my experience that it's very similar to catalog searching. It's just the search scope is different, so the queries adapt to it. A few words about the basics of ranking of the results. And what we are doing in order to look beyond the search terms, because the search terms do not express the full meaning of the user, not always. And then sometimes we think we need to complement the specification of the searching with some kind of a recognition, and I'll talk about that too. So what and how do library users search? If you take a look at search logs, and these are real logs taken from the Primo system, so you see it's a combination of things. Sometimes the queries are very specific, sometimes they're very fluid. I mean, like somebody looking for agriculture is very different from somebody looking for an introduction to material science and engineering. Sometimes it's a whole citation, sometimes just a few words. And it can go on, and this is just a snippet of a log. From our statistics, more than 80% of the users, close to 85%, are using the basic search and no advanced features at all. So if we take a look at one snippet, we can divide the types of searches to several types. Sometimes people look for broad topic, such as Mao Zedong or linguistics or Algeria in this case. So we need to think of what is in their mind when they're putting such a query, when they're submitting such a query. Sometimes they're looking for a topic which is narrow, I mean not as broad like the specific disorder, but it's not a known item search. It's not a specific article or book typically. I mean, sometimes it could be, but in many cases it's information about a narrow topic. Very often they use author name or creator name in various ways, either in combination of other things or just by itself. And sometimes you're not very sure whether it's the name of the author that is in their mind or something about the author in their mind, like Mao Zedong, whether it's something about him or what he wrote. And more often than not, they're trying to look for something very specific. We call that known item searches. So obviously, the known item is something that it's known to the user. I'm a user coming to the library, and I know what I'm looking for. It's not always expressed in the way they phrase their queries. So there are 2 stages here when the system needs to address such needs. First of all, how does the system find the results that match the query? And that's one thing. So we have a result list. The result list could be of 10 records, or could be of 3 million records, or anything in between or more. And the second question is, how does the system order the results, sorts the results so that the best ones, or the ones that are most likely to fit the information need, are at the very top. Because we take it for granted, at least in our systems, that everything on the list is relevant to the query. But the question is, how relevant? What's the degree of the relevance so that it fits to the right place on the list? So the thing is that we need to know what's the intent of the user. And these are some examples. I come to the library because I need a quick overview, or I need the newest article in my study, or I need material for a course assignment or for a research project, or I want a specific item regardless of any other thing on my agenda. And if we look at models of information seeking, this is one of the models, and see it's not even new, it's from 1995, the model of Belkin and et al. And they're talking about modes, or sometimes they call it dimensions of interaction. They're looking at the method of interaction, at the goal, at the mode of retrieval, and at what kind of resource are you considering for the sake of a specific search session or search process. And they're looking at the spectrum. So typically our behavior is somewhere on the spectrum of each of these domains, or each of these modes. So if I'm looking between scanning and searching, depending on what I have in mind, I'm either searching for something specific or scanning a list. Or do I want to select something, or just to know whether it exists, or anywhere in between? Or do I know exactly what I want, or I just know it when I see it? Or do I want just the meta information, the metadata, or do I want the information itself? So if we take a look at literature search, so we can portray it on this kind of model, so that it's a combination of searching and scanning. Those of you who were with me at the workshop yesterday, so we were talking about this researcher who was looking for information. So everybody thought, okay, she should find something and then scan or look around it. So it's a combination. And then whether the goal is to learn or to select. So first, when I do a literature review, so I need to learn that there are these things there. And then I'd probably recognize the things that are relevant to me, not so much specify them in advance. And I'd consider just the metadata at first glance, and I won't read every article at this stage. Where when I look for known item, I would be very specific in the mode of interaction. I am searching for something. I want to select it, not just to know that it exists. I specify rather than recognize, and I need the information itself and not just the meta information. So our behavior can be mapped on this model in various ways. Now, looking at user studies, this is one from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. They did some studies, and they got to the conclusion, that 51% of the searches are for known item searches. How do we know that it's a known item? We can look at some examples later. Typically, it's a longer query. There is uppercase, lowercase, like a sentence. There are connecting words. There are all kinds of heuristics to know that. Interestingly enough, they also spotted that the average length of a query is much longer than it used to be, much greater than it used to be in the past. And for those of you who looked at the articles from, let's say, 5, 6, 8 years ago, queries were shorter by average. And I think it's just because people don't type any longer, they just copy and paste. And if you copy and paste, you don't mind. You can copy a whole sentence, you can copy a citation, and so on. So when we look at the logs, we find several ways in which people look for, say, known items. Sometimes they just copy and paste the title. Sometimes they do a combination, like author name and one or two, or the whole words, or the whole title. Sometimes they add punctuation, so they have some title words and author. Sometimes they combine title, author, and some words from the title, author, and year, and any combination of these. And we see now, recently, that people started just pasting citations. Recently, I don't mean the last week, but in the last years. We just copy and paste the whole citation. So we need to address these. Now, I just want to go back a little bit to basic ranking. How do we match? How do we give a score to a result on a result list by which later we sort the results? Just as we see it, there are three major components to this ecosystem. There is a query, specific query. There is a document that we need to give it a score, and there is a user. And the relevance is always in the eyes of the user. Two people can pose the same query, but each of them is looking for something slightly different. The relevance is dependent. For example, I could be a first-year student and I'm looking for something about the syndrome. I need a different type of material than a practitioner, a doctor, who has a patient waiting and he needs to give him an answer. So the match between the query and the document, that's the basic type of relevance that as we have known it always, but we add to this equation something about the document which is regardless of the specific query. It's, you can think of in the terms of Google like a page rank. Okay, some pages on the net are more significant, I won't say better because it's not a question of value, but they're more important or significant or likely to address the information need than other pages. The same about research work. A Nobel Prize winner writing an article about his whatever he discovered is probably writing it in a better way than a student somewhere summarizing the same topic for a course. And then there is the user. Who is the user? What characterizes the user? The language, the degree, the discipline, and so on. And there is something about the information need, because I can be the same user, but I come, let's say I'm an instructor and I come to look for materials for my students. My needs are different than something about the same topic, but for my own research. So when we process a query, there are three stages, and I'm looking now not so much at the technical stages, but at the conceptual stages. The first thing, we look at the query. I mean, we is the system in this case. The system looks at the query and does all kinds of manipulations to it. In fact, at least in Primo, and I assume it's the same in every system, one query is actually translated to dozens of queries, all sent to the system in parallel, and the combination of the results of each of them is actually what gives the score of a specific document. So we look at the language. Language matters because linguistics analysis matters to the query. We do some stemming to the words, so we know what is the core word. If there is an author name as part of the query, we try to take it out from a query so that we know that part of the words are the title and the author is not the same. We don't want to combine them. We look at if it's a citation, so what's the format of the citation. We take out stop words, or we know that these are stop words, let's say. We look at variation of terms, compound words, such as roadmap, so we need to know sometimes they're together, sometimes they're separate. We correct some spelling mistakes, as I'll show you later. Then we send the list of queries to the system, and then we calculate the score for each item on the list. So there are things such as where the search terms appear in the field, in the document. So if it's in the title, if I'm looking for global warming and both words are in the title, so it's probably more on my topic than if global and warming appear somewhere in the full text. We look at the term frequency. How many times the terms appear in the record? We looked at the inverse document frequency. Actually, we want to look for words that are meaningful, that are different, not words that have every document has them. We look at phrase recognition and slop. So we try to find words that mean something together, not just as two separate words. Global warming is a term, and you can find documents where you have global and warming in two different places. It's not what I'm looking for. We look at the dates, and sometimes dates usually, well, it depends in a discipline, but in many disciplines the date is very important. If I'm a scientist, I'm looking for newer materials. We identify broad topic queries, so we address them a bit differently, and we look at the value score. The value score is a score that we give a document based on where it was published, what type of material it is, number of citation it has, and so on. So if we take an example, I'm looking for sleep deprivation and cognitive performance. This is a topic search, and actually you can see that there are two terms in here, the sleep deprivation and the cognitive performance, and they're together in a sense that it's not like sleep performance is not what I'm looking for. So if I'll show you a part, this is on our development service, so it's not necessarily how it is at the end, but just to give you an idea. Actually, my query is translated to a series of queries you can see in here. And some of them are like phrase queries. I'm looking for sleep deprivation and cognitive performance as a whole phrase, or I divide it to two queries and so on. I look at the term query, so I look at each of the words as well. I can look at, I'm looking at in the title, in the description, in the subject. So the queries are sent, and this is the analysis of a specific document. So depending on where the document was, the term was found, I give it a specific weight. Field weight means that if it's in the title, then it's more significant than in other places, and so on. I look at the IDF, at the TF, and so on. This is another example when I look for a known item, and in this case I added that's the author name and the title, a very common way of searching. So I got the first record, but it's because the system knew how to extract the author name. You can see that Albert Bandura was searched in the creator field, whereas the other words were searched in the title. Later on you'll see in subject, in full text, and so on. And what we use in our lab is a system where we can change, it's like an A/B system, so we can change parameters and see side by side. This is one screenshot actually, side by side, the differences that are made once we change something about the ranking. So, and then the last thing that we do is the blending. So, those of you who know Primo, we actually look at two different indices. We have the local index, what the library, the index that reflects what the library owns locally, and then we have Primo Central, which is everything else. So we need to blend results coming from those two indices. And the library can boost the local results as much as the library wishes. It's very easy to ignore local results because you may have 1 million items or 4 million items in your library, and there is 1 billion items out there, and you need somehow to make sure that your local collection is not forgotten. So you can boost results, whether if they are relevant. I'm not saying just to put things there, but you can do that as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what is the meaning of the user when searching, not so much what the user is saying. And what we did, we looked at logs and we identified patterns, and especially we identified cases where the user is very sure that the information she gave was accurate and exact, and still she didn't get what she wanted, and then it's very frustrating. The first is the phrase recognition, and we do that also. We use part of speech tagging. So in this example, I'm looking for minority students in special education. The system knows to break it down. So minority students is one term, and special education is the second term. It doesn't mean that the two words have to be adjacent. You can see even in here, no, in this example it works well. But sometimes you can see that there is a gap between the two words, but they're still related to the same topic. We do look at compound words. This is very annoying. I write self-knowledge, and actually it's self-knowledge, and I don't find the item. So we corrected that. We looked at spelling corrections, spelling mistakes. We all do that when we type. I mean, some of us do more than others. And sometimes we call it typos. Sometimes we just don't know the spelling, especially if we're not native speakers. So we do use file spelling correction. So in this case, I looked for environmental air pollution and I spelled pollution wrong. I still get the item that I want. Now, we also identified that sometimes people are asking questions. This is very new, actually. It wasn't in the past. I think it's because of Siri and other technologies that we are using that make it, actually, why shouldn't I ask the computer for something that I want? So we started supporting some of this, not much. But if I have a question like, who is Sophocles? And there is no title like this, then we think, okay, so probably the user wants to know who is Sophocles. And then we ignore the who is and give some reference material about that, about Sophocles. This is as opposed to who is Mark Mayers, which is a name of a title, and then you get the title as the first one. Citation search, so I just copy and paste the whole citation, and I get it as the first result as well. And then all the variations of author names and detection of author names. This was not always easy, and still not always easy. Sometimes some authors have names that could be, other terms like Bird, Mr. Bird. Do you know that Bird is a name or Bird is a part of the title? It's not always easy to identify. Another thing is people use names of journals. So you can find somebody's writing science and very annoyed that the journal Science is not the first item on the list, although there are probably hundreds or thousands of items whose exact title is Science. We do identify when it's a journal name, then actually what you want is the journal and not anything else. Some search variations. In this case, I changed a few things in the title just to show you that I still find the exact title even though I made some spelling variations. Leading articles missing or redundant. This is often the case. You don't remember. So, for example, I wrote The Edge, although the title is On the Edge, and still that's fine. Or I wrote The Food Resources, although the title has just Food Resources. I wrote On the Forest Management, and actually it's just Forest Management. I just added something. So when the query is very similar to a known title, then we let it go. We are more tolerant than we used to be in the past. And then there are all the typo corrections. So I looked for genealogy instead of genealogy, or I looked for taxonomy instead of taxonomy. Or what I often do, I just change the order. I replace the order of the letters. Now, when in a system where we actually do an and between the words, right? When you type in 5 words, we find documents that have all 5 words. So such a typo means that actually the document may not match the query unless there is a similar typo in the document. But we correct these before we send the query. Then there is this autocomplete option. So autocomplete will know it, but it's actually a great way to identify known items. I know what I have in mind, I start typing. So what we do with the autocomplete is that we make it sensitive to your own collection. So only titles in your library will come up and not any title. We base it on search logs of everyone, but we filter the logs so that it matches only your collection. Otherwise it's really very annoying because you start typing, you get the perfect title, you click go, and there are no results. So this is not the case. So you see I start by typing on the and then on the life and times. So it's actually the results that I start getting are not, the on the is not the beginning of the phrase. And then I added the life of time of Pushkin. And actually the title I wanted is It's on the life of times of Alexander Pushkin, so it doesn't have to be even adjacent. The words don't need to be adjacent. Now, if I failed, let's say I did not manage to specify the document to the degree that the system expects, then we need to complement the technique, the method of finding, with some recognition patterns. So sometimes, like in here, I know I'm looking for a book called Little Boy Lost. I know the book, I saw it, it was white, small, and I saw it in the library. But you see, I have here, I look at the British Library, and there are several books with the exact same title, and this happens all the time. So in this case, the system can't help me. I need to look and recognize which one is the one I was looking for. Or even I look for The Nature of Happiness. I was sure it's just the title of the book, but apparently it's just part of the title of the book. So not always the system can make a decision of 100%, and the user has to look at the list. Another option is to do some browsing, as we did in the past. We added this. So, for example, I know the name, I know the family name of the author. I don't know the first name. The name could be very common, so I can look and search and browse by author or by title. I know it's the little clay, but I wasn't sure what's the end of the title. Other way of finding things is by finding something that we know and going from there to the new thing. And that's very often you find an anchor, and then you try to expand your horizons around it until you found something that is relevant to you, or the thing that is relevant to you. So we added something we call visual browse. I know it's a book of the same author who wrote Far from the Madding Crowd. Obviously, I can go and look for Far from the Madding Crowd, find the author name, click the author, find all the books. But we added this to replicate the same experience that you have if you go to the library and you look at the shelf and you browse the shelf. So it's browsing by the call number, and then, okay, actually this is the book I wanted. It's The Return of the Native. I just didn't remember that it was Thomas Hardy who wrote it. Another way is the recommendation. So I look for something about Sophocles' Antigona, but I find what I want through what other people did. So many people, or enough people, found their way from this item to any of these, and therefore I may just skip the whole process and also get to these through their experience. Just to sum up, I think it's very important, first of all, to know that ranking is not an exact science, and any one of you who developed it themselves or even struggled with any system, including great Google, sometimes Google fails. So it's not an exact science, and it's very, very much dependent on the specific user. What is the information need of the specific user? So basically, we need to understand who is the user, what they want, and there are two ways of doing it. Either start a dialogue. Oh, do you want it to be the newest article, or do you want the original article? Do you want it in English? Do you want it in French? Do you want it in this? Or do you want it? No user will stay 2 minutes in the system that asks so many questions. So we have to find ways to know the users. And here I want to tell you that we are doing now a research about personas in the library. So any of you wish to help us with defining the personas and playing a little bit about personas, then we will be very happy if you come to me and just give me your names. So what we are trying to think of is moving in several directions. First is to find, doing with the persona study, we want to profile the users so that we know better how to address the needs of a specific persona which represents the user, specific users. We did a personalized ranking in Primo a couple of years ago we added it. The issue is that people need to authenticate so we know who they are and give us some information about themselves. Because unlike Google, we cannot trace personal information. We never keep the search information of a specific user. People can keep their queries if they want, but we don't do that. And everything that we keep is anonymized, completely anonymized. So the personal ranking can work only if people are cooperating. So perhaps the way to do is to profile users and address their specific needs in a different way. Another thing that we're doing is clustering information so that we find similar materials, not because of rough matches, like having the same subject heading that somebody else added to the record, but because of similarity in the content of the materials. And this we do with big data analytics that we employ to Primo Central, and we can find similarities. And what we want is also to offer means of what we call scholarly navigation. So you can navigate from one item to another in new ways, not just by clicking the links that are defined by the metadata, such as author and subject. So, thank you very much. I think I did it just in time. And
thank you very, very much. It was really interesting. And now we have time for one question for Tamar. Some kind of. I have a question for you because I find it interesting with putting in citation and the system handles it, because that's a pattern we see more and more that people search that way. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you deal with it? Because there's a lot of abbreviations, special signs of things that can be tricky to handle.
It is very tricky. So we don't do every format right now, but we're adding them gradually. So we started with the more common formats, and we're just adding them all the time. So actually, we don't need the whole citation to identify an item. Typically, if you give a title, an author, and perhaps year, that's enough. We don't need the rest. So the question is how to get rid of everything else, parse the other information and take it, and this is what we're looking at, not to try to, understand everything around it.
Yeah. Thank you.